Imagine quitting your comfortable Wall Street job to sell books online in 1994. People probably thought Jeff Bezos had lost his mind. And yet, that crazy idea turned into the most dominant company in the world, Amazon. But the road to building an empire wasn't exactly smooth. Let's talk about how Jeff went from driving a beat-up Honda to being worth over $150 billion. And yes, it involves some truly wild moments. Jeffrey Preston Bezos was born on January 12, 1964, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Fun fact, his last name wasn't originally Bezos, it was Jorgensen. His biological father was a bike shop owner, but his parents divorced when Jeff was just a baby. His mom later married Miguel Bezos, a Cuban immigrant who adopted Jeff and gave him his now famous last name. Miguel worked as an engineer, and the family eventually moved to Houston, Texas. Even as a kid, Jeff was a tech genius in the making. Legend has it that when he was just 3 years old, he dismantled his crib with a screwdriver because he didn't want to sleep in it anymore. Talk about knowing your boundaries early. By high school, Jeff had big dreams. He told his classmates he wanted to be a space entrepreneur and even joked about colonizing space someday. Spoiler alert, that wasn't a joke. Fast forward to the early 1990s. Jeff graduated from Princeton University with degrees in computer science and electrical engineering. He was the guy who could walk into any tech company and land a job, and that's exactly what he did. He started working on Wall Street at hedge funds and investment firms. By age 30, Jeff was making a six-figure salary and living a life most people would kill for. But that wasn't enough for him. One day, Jeff read a statistic that blew his mind. Internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year. He knew he had to get in on that action, and he came up with a wild idea: an online bookstore. Sounds obvious now, but back then, people barely trusted the internet, let alone thought it was a place to buy books. So Jeff did what any responsible adult would do. He quit his stable, high-paying job, packed his life into his car, and drove to Seattle to start his company. His wife, Mackenzie, who he met at his Wall Street job, drove with him and fully supported the idea. And let's not forget, Jeff had no funding at the time, just his savings and a dream. In 1994, Jeff started Amazon in his garage, and I mean a literal garage. He used a door as a desk, yes, an actual wooden door, and hired a few friends to help. Jeff was the CEO, customer service rep, packer, and janitor all rolled into one. The company was named Amazon because Jeff wanted a name that began with A to show up early in alphabetical listings and symbolize something massive like the Amazon River. If the name Cadabra sounds familiar, it's because that was his original choice, but his lawyer convinced him it sounded too much like cadaver. Not the best vibe for an e-commerce brand. The early days of Amazon were rough. Jeff personally delivered some of the first orders to customers. He even had a bell in the office that would ring every time someone made a purchase, but within weeks, they had to unplug it because sales were coming in so fast. By 1997, Amazon went public, and Jeff became a millionaire almost overnight. But here's the thing, he didn't stop at books. Jeff wanted Amazon to sell everything. His vision was to create what he called the everything store. If you needed it, Amazon would have it. This meant constant reinvestment. Even when Amazon started making money, Jeff poured nearly all the profits back into the company. He was willing to take big risks, like launching Amazon Prime, which people thought was insane at the time. Who gives customers free 2-day shipping for a yearly fee? Turns out, millions of people loved it, and Prime became one of Amazon's most profitable ventures. Jeff's obsession with customer experience was next level. There's a famous story of him placing an empty chair in meetings to represent the customer. Everyone in the room had to think about what that silent, invisible person would want. A little weird? Sure. Effective? Absolutely. As Amazon grew, so did Jeff's fortune, and his personality seemed to change too. In the early days, he was this nerdy, soft-spoken guy who looked like your friendly IT neighbor. But once the billions rolled in, he became a whole different person. Jeff hit the gym, got jacked, started wearing leather jackets, and even shaved his head for a more alpha look. People joked he was transforming into Lex Luthor, and honestly, the resemblance is uncanny. But Jeff wasn't just focused on Amazon. Remember his childhood dream of space colonization? He founded Blue Origin in 2000, a space exploration company. His goal? To make space travel as routine as air travel, because apparently dominating Earth wasn't enough. In 2019, Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos announced their divorce after 25 years of marriage. The split became one of the most expensive in history, with Mackenzie walking away with $36 billion in Amazon stock. While that sounds like a lot, Jeff was still left with plenty, and it barely slowed him down. The drama didn't stop there. Around the same time, Jeff got involved in a public feud with the National Enquirer, which claimed to have compromising photos of him. In true Bezos fashion, he outmaneuvered them by publishing an open letter calling them out for blackmail. Classic billionaire move. Today, Amazon is a juggernaut, selling everything from groceries to streaming services. It's worth over $1 trillion, and Jeff is one of the richest people on the planet. But with great power comes great criticism. Jeff has faced backlash for Amazon's treatment of warehouse workers, aggressive business practices, and even his own wealth. After all, when you're worth over $150 billion, people start asking why you're not solving world hunger. But Jeff doesn't seem too bothered by the criticism. He once said, "If you can't tolerate critics, don't do anything new or interesting." Fair enough. So what can we learn from Jeff Bezos? For starters, taking big risks can pay off, if you're willing to work like crazy and make sacrifices. But let's keep it real. Jeff didn't do this all on sheer grit alone. He had some privileges most folks don't. A top-tier education, financial stability from his Wall Street days, and let's not forget a family that could loan him startup cash when he needed it. Sure, he worked hard, but it's easier to take big swings when you've got a safety net. The lesson here? Use what you've got, no matter how big or small your net is, and keep swinging. If you love hearing stories like this, make sure to subscribe for more tales of ambition, grit, and maybe just a touch of luck.